Hello. So today we're going to talk about something more happy, religion, and specifically miracles, faith, and how to deal with pain. Or you see, like when you are in a huge amount of pain, you don't understand that, I am religious, I am a good person, why do I still have to suffer? Why does God allow this? This has been a question for thousands of years. And I am not going to give you any special answers. I can't relieve your suffering. This isn't a motivational video. This isn't a video to break down your religion or to build it up, because I assume you are either religious or you're not, or you're somewhere in between. I'm not saying you should stop taking medication. I'm not saying you should start taking medication. This is just my take on basically the concept of God, pain, suffering, and faith. That's all. Across the vast span of human history, from the deserts of ancient Israel to the hospitals of the modern world, the question of suffering has remained ever present. If there is a good and all-powerful God, why does he allow so much pain? This question is not new, nor is it confined to theology. It is echoed in philosophy, literature, psychology, and most powerfully, in the anguished hearts of those who have suffered. Theologian Jürgen Moltmann, shaped by the trauma of war and captivity, wrote, "The ultimate question of theology is the suffering of God with the world." His view captures a shift in modern theology, moving from abstract arguments to experimental reckoning. Suffering is not peripheral, it is central, and it cannot be dismissed with a glib platitudes. Those of you we all suffer. Like some of us suffer minimally, and others of us suffer heavily. Like some of us will suffer, let's say, a fender bender, a small, you scratch the paint of your BMW, or, your insurance still pays out, but let's say it's an inconvenience for you, that's minor suffering. And some of us have to go through some of the most worst things that can happen to humans. Like you can lose, I think one of the worst things that can happen is to lose a son, a child, a baby, a very small baby, elderly adult son. Like recently, my mom's son's cousin died, and he was an old man. He was about 55, and it was still extremely heavy for my mom's aunt, because it's her son. Even although she has had him for 55 years, it doesn't take away that extreme anguish. I personally lost a brother. I lost my father, and having lost my father, I wasn't quite ready for that. That was painful, but that didn't compare to losing my brother, which was really painful. I was like, and I basically, it happened within a 2-year period of each other. Like first my dad and then my brother. And, I'm over it now. It took a very long time to get over it. And now I can have a candid conversation about it without, bursting into like tears or something. And look, if you, after a 50-year period, after losing someone, still tears up when you speak about them, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because it is very severe, deep pain. I just happen to handled it in a different way. That's all. I'm not special. So I can empathize definitely with people who have lost, relatives, and brothers and siblings. Luckily, I have not been tortured by the death of a child. And then there's other things like, very bad things that can happen to you as a woman. War crimes, like things like these. Getting a very bad illness, even if you go to the gym every day and you eat like a healthy diet, and you don't smoke, you don't drink, you sleep well, and then suddenly you get a super crazy cancer or a immune disease that strikes 1 in 10 million people, and the doctors have no cure for it. Or they can attempt to cure it, and then you spend like all of your savings, your pension money, you sell your house trying to cure it, that or the disease of a loved one, and then they die anyway. That is not, that's not like a little scrape, that's not like physically breaking a bone or something like that. That's not failing an exam. That's like the opposite. And when something like this happens to us, we really, this is when faith comes into play, I think, strongly. And then on the converse, like miracles, is also true that, I said before, this isn't a video purporting all the benefits or the virtue or the truth of religion or religiosity or Christianity, and this is not a scientific video debunking it. It's not one of these two things. Like miracles, for example, well, from a biblical perspective, like when Jesus turned the water into wine, that's like, let's say a legitimate miracle in terms of like, okay, this is like something that defies science. But you get other kinds of miracles too. Like when, let's say, you need to submit a special paper to your boss, but you are not ready at all. And like he told you, he will fire you, or retrench you if it's not submitted at that time, and the entire company's computer system crash, and you're able to go home and finish it on time to submit it, the next day. Technically, that is also a miracle. Like if you drop a plate and it doesn't break, because it fell on a dirty sock you were too lazy to remove from the floor, technically that's also a miracle. I'm not diminishing the meaning of miracles. I'm just saying that something that shouldn't have happened. That is my basic definition of it. You can, of course, you are free to add the meaning that, okay, it should be induced by a higher divine being, like let's say God or Elohim or Jesus Christ, or if you're a different religion like Allah or whatever. But like that is fair, you can say that, but the concept, the idea of miracles are real, and we can have miracles in our lives. Like, for example, I think one of the most common miracles is, I can say this out of personal experience, is I really struggled to pass my engineering degree. And several exams I wrote, several practicals I submitted. It was miracles that it worked, and that I passed these exams. Like, I know you can find scientific, or I know you can go and measure it scientifically or empirically and find like perfectly good logical scientific reasons to explain all of these things, and maybe probably that's true. Nonetheless, it can be viewed philosophically, definitely, as a type of a miracle. And then if you are religious, if you're a Christian or, a Hindu or whatever, like, then you can say it's a religious miracle. Now, I have a type of a miracle of sorts in my life that before my dad died, when I was about 22, he almost died. He almost died when I was, I think, 7. Yeah, like something like that. And my dad was an extremely religious person. Full disclosure, I'm agnostic. I varied between religions. I was Christian. I was a very devout Christian up until 25. Then I became more like agnostic. Then I became New Age. Then I just became agnostic again. So yeah, I'm just like agnostic. I believe that like you can't explain everything by science. It's not so clear cut. And those of you who are absolutely Darwinian may totally disagree with me, and that's fine. And so you can measure everything, but science changes so quickly. I mean, just the other day, when was it? It was in the 50s or something that they discovered quantum mechanics. And we still don't truly understand quantum mechanics or string theory. So, and even if they do fully, understand like this God particle and string theory and all of this stuff, most probably, if you look at the rate of science, they're just going to always discover new and new things. I believe it's going to be a non-ending like revelation of knowledge. And you can easily see this from history. If you go and see what the Greeks knew or the Aztecs knew, 5,000 or 2,000 years ago, what did like the Romans know 2,000 years ago? What did the Italians know 500 years ago? What did the Chinese know 2,000 years ago? And then let's say you compare it to something more recent, like let's say the 1700s. If you studied like mathematics or science or mathematics, science, or what's the other one? Mathematics, science, well, let's just say those two, or computer science, like you'll see that a lot of the stuff was only placed on paper, like mathematically discovered or figured out in, let's say, the 17th, 18th century. Like if you open like a calculus, one of these nice thick, like calculus 101 textbooks for the first and the second semester. You'll see to the left quite often, all the ones I had, and they came from the United States, they were like that. There was like these notes about when like scientific discoveries were made, and like there's a history to all these discoveries. They follow one another, but there's always more. Like when Einstein came forth with his theory of relativity, people thought this is the ultimate thing. When Freud came with his now well debunked theory, of psychoanalysis, people thought this is the thing. And then they just discovered there's more and more things. Like also with psychology, like the MBTI thing was supposed to say, okay, there's only 16 personalities. We now realize it's way more complicated than that. Neuroscience, we are making discoveries frequently. And because my point with all of this is that this places doubt in my mind that, okay, is there not maybe, is it thus truly possible to discount let's say, a creator being. Like whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it Allah is irrelevant. Like a creator, and that like explains my agnosticism. Like it's kind of like interesting as well if you look at all of your religious texts kind of have the same rules, like basically thou shalt not kill. That's, you find it like everywhere. And this is very common. And getting back to my miracle, like essentially, my dad was a very religious person. I come from a very religious family. And my grandfather was a reverend for the, what we call in Afrikaans, the NG Kerk, which is a Dutch Reformed church, like a Protestant church. And thus my dad was very conservative and religious. So when he got that ill, when I was that young, my dad actually made a pact with God. Like you would read in the Bible, made a prayer, like in his mind, a pact with God. Like, give me so many years. I forgot the exact number of years, but give me this exact number of years. And there's like I think he referenced King Hiskia or something from the Bible. There was like this Old Testament figure who basically needed to fix his kingdom before he died. Like he was almost going to die, and then he made a pact with God, like, okay, Israel isn't ready yet, like please spare my life until I can get my house in order. And God gave him the exact time to do that. The same happened with my dad, and my dad revoked that example in the Bible in his mind. So you can say this is pure probability, that's fine, and you can say this is a miracle from God. I'm somewhere in between. Like the one is the probability is so low for it to be a coincidence, and the other one is, well, a legitimate modern day miracle that would be basically legitimately biblical almost. So you see, it's not simple. Let me continue. Yet, against this backdrop of agony, something strange happens. A dying person is suddenly well. A mother hears a voice in a burning building, guiding her to safety. A man drowning in grief has a vision that changes the course of his life. These moments defy explanation. They are not statistically predictable. They do not conform to natural law, but they happen, and those who experience them call them miracles. Soren Kierkegaard wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." We may never fully explain why suffering exists or why miracles occur, but we can ask what they mean and whether they are a sign of a deeper reality at work. So that's the problem of suffering, is essentially, we have to live with it. We will be confronted with it. But now and then, like, we get like a get out of jail card, where the suffering ends unconditionally, and there is quite often no explanation to why. The nature of miracles. The word miracle often conjures images of violated laws of physics or divine intervention that suspends causality. Yet classical Christian theology offers a more nuanced view. St. Augustine wrote, "Miracles are not contrary to nature, but only contrary to what we know about nature." In other words, Miracles may not be violations of natural law. They may reveal dimensions of nature or divinity that we have yet to comprehend. C.S. Lewis offers a helpful analogy. Miracles are retelling in small letters the very same story which is written across the whole world in letters too large for some of us to see. For Lewis, miracles were not interruptions of reality, but windows into its deeper layers. They function as signs, pointing not to themselves, but to God. I have many friends who are like me, but they selectively also do believe in some miracles. Not all miracles, but in some miracles. Because there are so many that defy probability. And it's like, what C.S. Lewis said, it's the small print. And it may not make sense, and that's, I think, why it's discounted so often, is it may not make sense to anyone else but to you, who's basically the saved party or the benefited party of this miracle, and that's why it is so special to you. This miracle that happened to my dad is very special to me. Whatever it is, and I know the atheists out there, those of you atheists will laugh your asses off now at me, and that's fine, I don't mind. What is very real, though, is that in my mind exists a question, and it's not answered, it can't be answered by AI. It cannot be answered by cannot be answered by a computer or a library, and not even totally with the Bible. Religious scripture may give some guidance with regards to miracles, but not quite. And we'll get into that. Romano Guardini added, miracles must be received in the context of revelation, not curiosity. The point is not spectacle, the point is meaning. In religious texts, miracles are deeply symbolic. Jesus healing the blind was not only about restoring physical sight, it was also a metaphor for spiritual awakening. In the Hebrew Bible, the parting of the Red Sea was not simply an escape route, but a revelation of divine liberation. Miracles function within narratives. They reveal character, mission, and grace. In this light, a miracle does not need to be grand. It might be subtle, intimate, or even quiet. It may happen in the soul rather than in the sky. Yeah, this for me was like I went obviously to Sunday school and stuff. I did quite well in Sunday school, if I may brag. I was like the top performing guy at church. But I was young, I was like 10 years old. And for me, back then, the Bible was super interesting, and I truly believed it was true. I really believed it was true. So that's why I just thought, for me, studying the Bible was like just studying biology or whatever. It made perfect sense. And I remember even when I was even younger, when I was like 5 or something like that, we had the children's Bible, like that beautiful colored Bible with like the water painted like pictures. And it's seared into my mind, actually. I haven't seen that book in freaking, how old am I now? 45. I haven't seen that book in 35 years. Okay. That image in that specific edition of Moses parting the Red Sea is seared into my mind. which is weird, considering that, I'm now an oldish man and I'm agnostic, yet from a children's Bible, this image is still there. And it did convey, like, it's not just parting the water, like, the first thing that hits you is, yes, the parting of the water is divine, is divinity. Like, physically being able to move things around like that is supernatural. But what actually hits you subconsciously, after obviously reading all the text about the maltreatment of the Jews by the Egyptian nobles, the sense of liberation, that there's an escape out of this tyrannical kingdom into a new place. What the new place will be was yet to be determined, but like, at least escape, and for me, this image will never really disappear. It will always, like the same with the Charlton Heston movie, where he also, parts the Red Sea. And even with the 1960s, like the tackiness of back then it was technologically advanced, but, if you look at the Charlton Heston movie now, the tackiness of how they parted the sea and stuff, it's still an impressive image. Like, if you look at it, watch that movie, it was still an impressive movie. Like, it's mind-boggling. Like, any artwork, interestingly enough, if you can look at any artwork, like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, when they painted like biblical imagery, it's very poignant. It stays in your mind. It doesn't leave. Like, if I tell you about the Sistine Chapel, unless you've never heard about it, like, you immediately get that image in your mind. It's almost like magic. It's very interesting, like, few forms of art has that power. It's very interesting. So, miracles, they can be grand, or basically, they can be quiet. It can be something that's very small. Testimonies and eyewitness accounts. If miracles do occur, they do not happen in laboratories. They happen in lives. Across cultures, continents, and centuries, millions have described moments that they call miraculous. Their accounts may vary in detail and intensity, but they often share core elements. The improbable becomes real. Fear returns to peace. Death is postponed. Despair gives way to joy. A woman with advanced cancer attends a prayer meeting. She has weeks to live. Months later, she is cancer-free. Doctors write spontaneous remission. She writes, God has healed me. And that does happen. Like, you can delve into cancer statistics and, give me empirical evidence, like, of that, okay, this is not true. Like, this is like the probability of healing from cancer and so on and so forth. But very often, people start healing and there's very little explanation to why. Just as there's like very little explanation quite often to why people fall sick. Remember, like, my dad died from autoimmune disease. It was the probability of someone getting that specific, what was it called again? I think it was idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura. The probability of getting that was like 1 in a million or 1 in 10 million. It was ridiculously The probability was ridiculously low of getting it. And at one stage, like when he was young, as I said, when he made the pact of God, that thing went into remission. It was gone, you see. And the doctors didn't know why. So you may say, okay, it's because they know nothing about this like autoimmune disease. But, there's another explanation as well. Maybe there is like divine intervention. Don't be so, don't dismiss any ideas just because you disagree with them. You should contemplate them. A child in a collapsed building is strapped for 5 days. Rescuers have given up hope. Then, inexplicably, the rubble shifts and the child emerges. A man in white told me not to be afraid, the child says. No one else saw the man. These stories do not meet the standards of controlled scientific inquiry, but their weight lies not in measurability, but in transformation. They change lives. They provoke conversation, gratitude, service, and sometimes even sainthood. Theologian Frederick Buechner once wrote, "A miracle is when 1 + 1 = 1,000. The math of grace cannot be replicated or systemized. It is not formulaic, it is personal." Philosophical and theological dilemmas. But miracles also raise questions, difficult ones. If God can intervene to heal one person, why not another? If prayer works for only one family, why does another bury their child despite praying for so hard? These are not theoretical puzzles. They are anguished questions of faithful people. David Hume argued that belief in miracles was irrational. For him, no testimony could ever outweigh the improbability of violation of natural law. But Hume presumed a closed system, a mechanistic universe where the divine was either irreverent or non-existent. Alvin Plantinga claimed this, arguing that if God exists, then the universe is not a closed system. The probability of miracles depends not on the laws of nature, he wrote, but on whether God has reason to act. Still, theology does not escape the problem of selective intervention. Henry Nouwen suggested that miracles do not erase suffering, they point through it. Our brokenness, he wrote, is always lived in community. Miracles are never isolated. They ripple outward, drawing others into love or awakening. N.T. Wright proposed a helpful framework. Miracles are not arbitrary divine flexes. They are signs of what God intends for the whole world. Healing, restoration, and peace are not interruptions. They are the final destination revealed ahead of time. You see, it's easy to say that, God should intervene. Suffering quite often is, a test. Even if you take religion out of the picture, let's say no religious text exists on earth. Suffering from a pure biological point of view is something that makes you stronger. If you bend a tree, it will basically start growing back into the right direction. If you go and you have a petri dish of cells and you irritate them, using light or some, formula that's not like to their liking, they will mutate. They will basically adapt to this. Adapt or die, maybe that's a harsh word to say, but like they will adapt. They will use the suffering to, at the very least, get out of it. And maybe if they're out of it, they'll be better on the other side, because like then you may remove the stress factor, but they have already mutated. Now they can actually thrive because they have already been tested under these extremely harsh conditions. Like if you're one of those awesome business people who have been bankrupt 10 times, and now you have like a stable company or companies, and you've got that four quadrant Robert Kiyosaki wealth, and you've got multi-generational wealth, and none of your businesses are in such a way that you'll ever go down again. A lot of that will have had to do with the fact that you went bankrupt like 10 times. Like each time was probably a disaster. Like probably the first times were the worst. And that would have helped you. Now, for me, this is such a vast area, like to cover. It's impossible to do in a single video, but I don't know what I would do if I were to lose a son, or a daughter, or even both. But what I do know is that for me to keep on living, like not to either go into a fetal position underneath my bed and stay there and rely on someone else to bring me food, or to just shoot myself. Sorry for that, but grief is like, for some people, grief can be excruciating. Would be the way out would be to find some meaning in the suffering. I had an East European friend who told me a joke. The East European definition of happiness is suffering, and that can be true. Like for someone with lower back pain, the one day that you don't have lower back pain is an awesome day. You see, and it's small things like these, like blind people, for example, when you lose your eyesight. My aunt, like another story, genetics, right? So my aunt had unfortunately, a similar disease to my dad. Hers, like, fortunately, she lived. Unfortunately, the disease attacked the nerve endings of her eyes, and she lost like 90% of her eyesight. She also lost like 80% of the feeling on her fingers, so she couldn't learn to read Braille. And this happened to her at a relatively young age, 45 or something. And my aunt emerged as a stronger, more vigorous, more inspirational woman after this. You won't believe it. But, the disease changed her for the better in other aspects. I believe it is up to us to decide how we deal with our suffering, whatever it may be, like death, disease, poverty, loneliness, divorce. There's so many ways we can suffer. Like, it's up to us to decide how we deal with it. Like, and even the silly example I mentioned, the scratch on your BMW. Are you going to have an awful day for the rest of the day? Are you going to kick the dog? Are you going to scream at your coworkers? Or are you just going to like be relaxed and say, okay, well, even although I'm not uninsured, there's nothing to be done. Like I will just have to save up money and fix this later. So I know this is cheesy, like what always, what's that smile? It's like, what's that song? Oh yeah, always look on the bright side of life. I know it's cheesy and I know it's tacky, but if you are a person watching this, like, be assured that, whether you're religious or not, that when you are suffering, you should persevere. And who knows, like maybe you will get a miracle. If you're a devout religious person, maybe you'll get a miracle who will solve, not only will it solve your problems, it will like, like Job from the Bible, put you in a better position than you were before. Or if you're, an atheist, just, a pure coincidence that's happy nonetheless, and you end up better. And if you cannot have these two things, if you unfortunately do have to suffer, it will be really great if you can somehow find meaning. Like, if you're watching this video right now, if your son died yesterday, and my greatest condolences to you and your family and your son's friends and his school and whatever, like, if this happened to you, this video would still be kind of an insult. How dare I know what true, raw, immediate suffering you are going through? And the truth is, I can't tell you. Like, I don't know what it feels like. But you can take certainty in one thing, and that is knowing that you are not alone. There are other people who have suffered, who are suffering, and who will suffer in the future. So we can maybe learn from them. Medicine is full of documented anomalies, spontaneous remissions, unexplained recoveries, placebo responses that defy biology. These are not proof of miracles, but they suggest that we do not fully understand the relationship between mind, body, and spirit. Karl Popper once said that science must be humble. Its power lies in its method, not in its metaphysical reach. You see, yes, I agree with this. The mind, body, spirit thing, like whatever you want to call the spirit, but you have to, health is like, it's kind of a trinity, which is strange because, like, we also have the trinity in the Abrahamic religion, or at least in Christianity, we have the trinity of God. Or so many things. It's like a triangle, it's three. Like you get three is a special number everywhere. But in any case, like, you have mind, body, spirit, and you can be like, we can define spirit as, like, let's say you may be cognitively going well 100%, and you may not be having, like, a chemical depression in your mind, but something else is terribly wrong. You are either you've lost hope, you are embittered, you've become darkened, in your soul have darkened, as a method of saying, like, and for example, like, for an embittered person and being embittered is not being depressed. These are two different things. Like, let's say for an embittered person to start going to the gym, to start like performing well at work, to study something new is very difficult because they are embittered. They need to basically heal, either with the help of someone else, by themselves, or a combination of the two things. So it's very interesting that, people view medicine in this way, and I have to concur with this. Cultural and historical perspectives. Belief in the miraculous is not confined to any one religion or era. From ancient Mesopotamia to modern Pentecostal churches, people have claimed to witness divine interventions. In Islam, the Quran itself is a miracle of linguistic and spiritual perfection. In Hinduism, God manifests in avatars that protect and heal. In Buddhism, miraculous powers are signs of enlightenment. Indigenous cultures see the divine in dreams, visions, and nature itself. In Christianity, miracle stories are central to the identity of Jesus, but they also appear in the lives of saints, mystics, and ordinary people. Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Teresa of Avila, Padre Pio, all were associated with miracles. Their lives suggest not a suspension of reason, but a deepening of reality. Anthropologists studying tribal societies note that belief in miracles often promotes social cohesion. These stories are not irrational. They are existential tools, ways of coping, meaning-making, and surviving. As Paul Tillich said, religion is the depth of culture. If miracles are expression of religious hope, then they are also expressions of cultural wisdom. Unanswered prayers and divine silence. For every miracle celebrated, there are countless that never come. Children die, cancer returns, wars rages on. The silence is the hardest reality of faith. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, awaiting execution in a Nazi Germany, wrote, "God lets himself be pushed out of the world and onto the cross." Bonhoeffer's theology of presence saw God not only in deliverance, but in solidarity. God suffers with the world. Mother Teresa, who served the dying in Calcutta, revealed in letters that she felt abandoned by God for decades. "There is such a deep loneliness in my heart," she wrote, "and yet she did not stop loving. Her faith lived without signs." Nicolaas Wolterstorff, after losing his son, wrote in Lament for a Son, "I shall look at the world through tears. Perhaps I shall see things that dried-eyed eye could not see." Faith, in these accounts, does not demand answers. It seeks presence. And sometimes, the miracles is not what happens, but in what remains. The role of faith and presence. Faith is often misunderstood as a certainty, but faith is more accurately described as endurance in uncertainty. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote, "Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase." Friedrich, these German names are so difficult. Luckily, I'm Afrikaans. I'm like, one of the Dutch descendant people from South Africa, so pronouncing these names are slightly easier for me, but they're still difficult. German people, why do you have such difficult names? Friedrich Schleiermacher called faith the feeling of absolute dependence. It's the acknowledgement that we are not self-sufficient, that our lives are interwoven with forces that we cannot control. Faith is not a mechanism to secure miracles. It is posture, a direction, a way of being open to mystery without demanding manipulation. Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote again, "It is not the religious act that makes the Christian, but the participation in the sufferings of God in the secular life. Faith, then, is presence. It is showing up, staying close, remaining in love. In this way, even when no miracle comes, faith becomes its own miracle." I totally agree with this in the sense that I'm not a great fan of people who are these intense scripture people who take every word and sentence for literal meaning right now in the 21st century. And a subset of those people in particular are people who basically use religion to attack science or discount certain sectors of science because it doesn't agree with their personal view of the Bible. Not like, let's say, a generally theological approach or consensus, but let's say someone, I often get it from people, and no offense if you're one, but people who read the King James Bible, they're like, I believe in the King James Bible. I'm like, fine, but the Bible I grew up with was it was Afrikaans Bible, and it was like the government made, it was like the NG Kerk's Bible, and basically everyone used it. If you like Afrikaans, why is my Bible wrong and your Bible is right? You see, can't wisdom be found in both? A similar message be found in both. And even if we go far out, if we go to the Indian Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita or the Quran or whatever, can't there be wisdom found in both? And a lot of that wisdom is this, that faith is knowing something, or faith is believing something, whether you know it or not. If you tell me, if you're like my best friend and you tell me, okay, I'll come and pick you up at the airport, I believe you. I don't know it. Because something may happen. You may get a flat tire, you may forget about it, there may be, a blockade on the highway. So many things can happen. You may have a flat cell phone, so you can't phone me to tell me to get a taxi or whatever. So I believe that you will come because I trust you. In trust is, it's also closely related with religion. You trust God. That's what a lot of people say. So I think that's what then also becomes kind of better, in the sense that even if you have gone through all the suffering, and you will go through all of the suffering until the end of your life, that maybe this faith that you have keeps you going. Even if it is a placebo, it doesn't matter. If this faith that you have keeps you going and enables you to carry the pain, knowing that, let's say, you're going to heaven, for example, why not? Why is it so important for atheists to break it down? And conversely, why should you weaponize faith to tell other people from that's either agnostic, atheist, or from a different religion, which I kind of think is almost worse because at least they also have faith, to basically tell them, you're not one of us, like, you don't know what you're talking about, you will die in agony. It's better to have, like, empathy, which is closely related to faith, I believe, because empathy is like a form of love, and faith is also related to that in the sense that it's knowledge. It's not knowledge. It's basically the compartment of love into the future. It's like future love. If that makes any sense to you, that's how I feel about it. Modern implication of the miraculous. In a digital world, belief in miracles can seem quaint, but surveys consistently show that large majorities, even in secular nations, still believe in the possibility of divine intervention. Miroslav Volf notes, if we are not selves who simply have beliefs, we are selves whose beings is shaped by what we hope for. Hope is not weakness, it is the substance of life. Miracles in this context remind us that not everything can be explained, planned, or controlled. They puncture our pride, they disrupt the illusion that we are in charge, they restore humility and sometimes joy. Yet, they must be treated with care. History is full of abuses, false healings, manipulative promises, and exploitation of the vulnerable. A theology of miracles must be ethical, grounded, and cautious. Real miracles provoke awe, not arrogance. We have to be very careful about, it's written in the Bible, beware of false prophets. And I'm sure it can be found in other religious texts as well. And written history is full with such people as well. Like recent history, like some of these cults, for example, Jim Jones, Jim Jones is probably the best one I can think of. David Koresh from the Branch Davidians in Waco. These people, never mind being not even properly religious or bending the Bible, they were legitimate psychopaths. And we need to be very, very careful of who we trust with our faith, because faith is very strong, but it can also be very brittle in the sense that it can be bent by other people pretending to have our best interest at their heart. When people invite you to, let's say, to church or to a different church or something, you can go, but the moment you feel uncomfortable, leave. And that goes for any, if you're a Muslim and you're in a mosque and someone invites you to go to a different mosque and you go there and, you're there for 15 minutes and something feels super off, just go, just leave. Your instinct is usually right. Here is where my quasi-atheistic things come in, your instinct, or what Christians would call the Holy Spirit will tell you something is off, be careful. And when we, this faith healing as well, I'm from South Africa. There's a lot of abuses with regards to faith healing. Lots of people make TikTok videos with clearly with clear abuses or tricks to make you believe that it was faith healing, and then they collect your money, using cryptocurrency or Ponzi schemes or whatever. There's so many things that they do, and they use religion and faith, as a weapon. It's weaponized faith, but they have turned your own faith against you. Keep your faith personal and share it with your community. And I think be very careful with who you entrust it. And it shouldn't be arrogant. If you are a Buddhist, or if you are a Hindu, whatever you are, and you want to win me to your cause, by taking up some strange, boisterous, masculine form of aggressive posturing, trying to scare me into adopting your religion, or else I'm going to burn in hell or something like that, you're not going to convert me, because I am one of those people, I'm one of many people who don't react well to threats, or at least, I will think that you're threatening me by saying you'll go to hell. But a person of flesh and blood is telling me I'm going to hell. It's not like a divine intervention. It's not a miracle that, this is like another thing of miracles, for example, is someone can, become religious, and that may be a miracle, like Saul, for example, from the Bible, when he took the road, was it from or to Damascus? I haven't read the Bible in a very long time. He took the road to or from Damascus, and then he fell blind or something, and then he became religious. That may happen, you never know. In conclusion, living with mystery. The question remains, if God is loving, why do some suffer while others are saved? There is no neat answer, only deeper questions. Karl Rahner wrote, "The Christians of the future will be mystic or will not exist at all. In the age of information, only deep experimental faith will survive." Thomas Merton said, "There is in all visible things a hidden wholeness. That wholeness may never be proven, but it can be encountered." Perhaps miracles are not proofs or prizes. Perhaps they are whispers, hints, signs. Perhaps we are not meant to explain the unexplainable. Perhaps we are meant to live within it, with reverence, courage, and love. In the end, the miracle may not be what happens. The miracle may be who we become. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope this has changed or not changed your mind in miracles, but thank you so much for watching in any case, and have a fabulous day. I hope a great miracle happens to you today, a positive one, whether you are atheist or Christian or Buddhist or whatever, and that you'll be better off at the end of this day. Thank you very much. Unless you're going to bed straight after this, then the day is gone. But in any case, thank you very much. Bye-bye.